able to scout what my opponent is doing, recognize that they're doing the same kind of thing as a pro was, and predict what they're going to do next. So that's an interesting aspect to it because it drives how people play. And that all feeds into the ladder, which is the thing that most people who stick with the game are focused on. It gets the most attention. It's the most robust part of the game, and it's where I've spent the majority of my time. Now, the ladder is really interesting to review because at the base level, it is excellent. It does matchmaking right. Like, it matches you up amazingly well. It aims to keep you at 50% win rate. So basically, if you're winning more than 50%, you're slowly facing harder and harder opponents. And it does keep this. Like, it's not like you're getting absolutely wrecked by people way better than you, then crushing people who are way worse than you. It's pretty balanced. You do have ups and downs, and it does give you a variety. It actually has increased its variety more recently, but it's really, really well done, and that helps a lot. Now, there are, in terms of also driving your play, there are various ladder ranks. So you can see in terms of ladders, you'll have, I'll go to my career summary because it will show a bunch of different ranks over time. So the order of ranks goes bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, master, and then there's at the top grandmaster, which is the top 250 players in each region. There's a top 200 players in each region. So the progression through there is one driving force, and on top of that, you have 100 people. You're set in a division, and there's 100 people per division. Your rank doesn't actually matter, nor does your league for that matter, because there's actually a hidden rank called your matchmaking rating, which is how you actually get matched up against people. But your league and rank within division gives some direction about where you are, a good estimate to it because of how well the matchmaking system works. And that really helps drive your push to get higher up the ladder. Now, there are also some wonky things about it that make it both addicting and very frustrating, and both good and bad in terms of how it works. The first and foremost thing that kind of goes all the way up to the very, very top, which is it's easier to execute builds that are risky than it is to defend them. So StarCraft 2, as mentioned earlier, is a game of economy. You're trying to build up an economy so you can get a big army so that you can kill your opponent. So if you don't have the economy, like if your opponent gets way ahead in economy, you're basically in a really bad position and likely to lose. So what comes from this is the concept of all-in builds, which is you sacrifice your economy so much that if you don't kill your opponent or do like massive damage with your attack that you're planning on doing by cutting that economy, then you're just going to lose horribly. And you'll see this all the way up to professional level where all-ins work a lot of the time, and it's a lot easier to execute them than to defend them. It's rewarding to play correctly, like play defensively and to not be the all-in player and defend it, because it is balanced enough that there isn't any one thing that will just win all the time. Like, you can defend it, it's just harder. So that can feel like a drawback a lot of the times when someone does a build that requires less skill than holding it, and it can be incredibly frustrating. In fact, a lot of people describe this game as the most rage-inducing game they've ever played. And I could probably say that for myself as well. And that is a big part of it. There's also some wonkiness in terms of the balance. There have been a lot of patches adjusting balance, and not all of them would be correct. They've gone back and forth and not necessarily given enough time for things to work themselves out. But it is quite balanced at the highest level, but that then has weird impacts on the lower levels. So there'll be aspects of races at different times that are balanced at the highest level and then really disproportionate in terms of difficulty at lower levels, in terms of relative skill, where when you're at an incredibly high skill level, it's very hard to you have the skills to do everything required. So what turns out is at different times, different races are easier for those who are lower than pro level. And this does refer to like mid-master and down, like still very high up the ladder, but not at that tip-top level. So you'll have different races that are just easier, which can also be a point of frustration. It has, so at the top level, it's definitely gotten much, much better in terms of balance. At the beginning of StarCraft 2, there were a whole lot of problems where it was becoming very luck-based in a lot of games because you couldn't rely on balance. There were certain things where you basically had to guess and hope for the best. So that has definitely gone better and helped improve the esports aspect, but it can make some frustration in terms of playing versus other people on the ladder. Another thing to consider is that because the game is so mechanically demanding, like the mechanics of constantly building workers, controlling your units correctly, expanding, building more bases at the correct time, getting all your correct tech at the right time, scouting your opponent, having map presence, not getting caught out of position, defending harassment like drops into your base, and any number of things is so mechanically demanding. Not just you have to be know everything about the game and know what to do in this and that. Forget game knowledge. You have to physically do all the actions, which adds up to hundreds of actions per minute. Like if you're under 100, there's basically almost no professional players that are under 150 actions per minute in terms of Blizzard time, which if you count real time is almost 200. And that's just to be able to do everything in the game. So if you don't invest a lot into it, if you aren't playing daily, then you're just not really going to progress because your mechanics won't improve at a rate that is sufficient to actually improve and move up the ladder. So if you're just playing a few games a week, you're never going to feel a sense of progression because you're really not going to get anywhere. You really have to keep going day in, day out at it. And that can be kind of a bummer if you can only play on weekends, for example, and you can play, say, 10 games on Saturday and Sunday. Well, that's great, but you're actually not going to improve because the muscle memory is all gone by the time you next play. So there's a lot of these things that make it both rewarding if you're willing to put in the time, and frustrating if you won't or can't. And even then, so there's a lot of things. Now, something else that is popped up recently is this most recent patch, which introduced the arcade, which has some positive features, has also introduced a lot of bugs. Um, there have been a lot of performance issues as of 1.5. There were a few actual gameplay bugs that have been fixed, but there's still performance issues for a lot of people, which is a big frustration because they weren't there before, and overall the changes that they made were completely unnecessary. It created this new streaming system when you actually load up. For example, if I load up another replay, it will actually show, okay, maybe it's not on a replay, but if you enter into a new game, it will stream in data in the bottom right corner. So that streaming system seems to have caused some of the problems. In fact, you'll see here there's an actual unit preloader map, and what this does, if we open it up, this will actually show us the streaming service because it has to download like 128 meg in order to start. Should show up here in the bottom right, unless I guess it's already downloaded, so it's not going to do that. So it's making me look stupid, but every time it streams in, and it has to restream in every time it closes the game, you'll see here it's going through all the different units, spawning them in, and then destroying them, going through every animation, because this actually performance of these units, if you just first go through and then go into a game every time is introduced, it will lag a little. So that can be a big problem.
Replay saved.
That's been a bit of a frustration. So there are a lot of these little quirks about the competitive aspect of it, but when you take a step back from that and look at the game as a whole, it is remarkably well done. The one problem that you'll see if you actually go into what the actual StarCraft 2 community thinks of the game, it's highly rooted in StarCraft 1 nostalgia, which is StarCraft 1 was an even more mechanically difficult game, largely due to technological limitations. For example, you could only hotkey 12 units at a time, which obviously made things harder, but that was only a technological limitation and kind of a stupid thing to carry over, but it makes it mechanically easier in StarCraft 2. And then you have different units, which then people will complain about, and every complaint seems to draw back to basically StarCraft 2 isn't StarCraft 1. Well, obviously. Also, similarly, it gets compared to Brood War, the final expansion of StarCraft 1. StarCraft 2 has 2 more expansions to go, so we'll see where the game ends up there. But even with all that, you take a step back, and the game is remarkably well done. Just the fact that the ladder is well done, that you can create a party, invite friends from your friends list to join you in a party. For example, you add 2 friends, you can go into the quick match, go into a 3v3, and play as a 3v3 team. You can go into the arcade and go into a custom game, and it will will only go into games where you can all join in. That the actual matchmaking is really well done, that there actually is a driving force behind you continuing to improve. There are achievements in the game. So you have